All right, another fortnight passes us by, and Paul Brennan here in Wellington, and
Martin Noakes, back in Wellington this time.
for those watching on YouTube, our clip at the front of the program, Martin, I thought it would be a good idea to put a classic in here. What do they call them? Mad Dogs, don't they?
Yeah.
This is actually a DC-9 Series 30,
Okay.
operating for IPEC, which was a freight company.
Yeah, you still see their logo around.
There's the JT8 sounds,
Yeah.
Down the back there. Not a huge capacity.
Packet freighter.
Package freighter.
Do you see the rear door going up and down on this clip?
No, you mean the steps at the back?
Yeah, they're not using
it. In there, but not using it. There you are, classic 70s cockpit there.
You know, if I ever designed planes, they would all have steps that came out the back.
Yeah, regardless of where the
whether you
engines
needed
were.
it or not.
Yeah, it's got to have that.
Yeah.
A door in the bulkhead.
Yeah.
Make it as complicated as
Yeah.
possible. You know, I really thought when we got together again last time, which is now, that they would have found that plane.
Yes.
But they haven't.
No. It obviously, perhaps, did head south, but they really got no idea. One interesting thing, an aside, is, gosh, there's a lot of litter floating around the southern Indian Ocean, isn't there?
That's one thing we've learnt.
Yeah.
And it's quite shocking.
Absolutely. It
There's
just seems like
stuff everywhere.
heave it over the side if we don't like it.
And that shows you the dirty underbelly that exists in the fishing industry
Yeah.
globally.
Yeah.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
They don't care.
They really don't care, no.
Well, it's just small stuff, isn't it? Bits of...
Plastic, this, that, and the other. Oh, chuck it over. Cheers.
Yeah, everything over the side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because some of those so-called debris fields spotted by the satellite, there are 300 pieces of
They're big.
stuff floating just in a short
I
area.
know. Shocking, really. Shocking.
But back to the flight. So, okay, so what do we know now? We know that the comms are all normal. Nothing wrong with the comms.
Seems to be nothing wrong with the comms, no.
So no indication of anything. What about altitude?
Well, there's reports coming out now that some people are saying that the altitude did not vary throughout the whole episode. So it stayed up at 35,000 feet.
So what does that mean?
I think, as we've seen, the world seems to be divided into two camps. There's the American side, which seems pretty convinced that there are some evildoers of some sort involved, and the rest of the world basically just doesn't know. I have no idea what to think because none of these claims have been verified. So some people are saying it didn't stray from 35,000 feet. Other people are saying it did stray from 35,000 feet. They're trying to base this on the Doppler effect from a satellite ping from 35,000 kilometers away. I think it's safer to say we just don't really know.
But surely right now, there's all those 777s flying around. There are legal companies around the world starting to circle. I saw one talking about that oxygen system fire. Basically some uncertainty that the industry has to sort out as soon as possible.
Difficult to sort out without any form of evidence, which is obviously why they've got this massive effort to try and recover something. But they don't even know if they're looking in the right place.
I think it might have turned more.
Yeah. What, coming closer to Aussie?
Well, it circled, in a big, huge, hundreds of miles wide circle, maybe not very, uniform, skating around all over the place. And, that could be a big area because it had a lot of range still in it.
Yes, and that's the point. They're going to, well, they are admitting it. They've got no idea where it is.
It's interesting, the split between the way the world sees it. You talked about, the American evildoer sort of approach compared to the rest of us. That's interesting.
Yes, it is, isn't it? On its own, it's interesting, yeah.
I mean, you could say there's a certain sort of...
Well, there's a split, isn't there? Yeah.
Oversensitivity, let's say, to seeing plots and conspiracies and things like that.
You could either say it's a country with a lot of conspiracy theorists. You could also say it's a confident, high-tech country that trusts its technology implicitly and refuses to believe that a plane can go that badly wrong without some sort of human intervention.
Yeah.
I quite like the conspiracy side of things, though. It's more fun.
I believe CNN's ratings in their crucial 25 to 45, or is it 55, one of those demographics, nearly doubled.
Yeah.
And ironically, because, Piers Morgan stopped, right?
Yeah.
They didn't like him in the end.
No.
It wasn't his accent, surely.
Well,
it was what he said about guns.
What's what he said about guns, but also don't forget that in most American movies where there's a bad guy, especially in the old days, they had a British accent. So maybe they equated Piers' accent with him being an evildoer as well.
Exactly. You nailed it. Ironically, his last show on CNN, because of this disaster, I think there was some interview he did, or obviously news surrounding it as they go through the show, because he's on in the evening, I think, 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
It was his highest rating show in years or something.
Yeah.
if something works, you don't give it up.
Well, they sure as hell didn't give it up, because they were thinking, oh, maybe it was a microscopic black hole that fell out of space. They were going mad.
Well, it could have been. Can't rule it out yet, Martin.
Well, yeah, quite possibly was.
There was a caption I saw on one of the sites. It was a screen grab of obviously someone watching TV and CNN's on, and the headline, where they have developing story.
Yeah.
The headline said, Boeing 777 will have trouble flying if it runs out of fuel.
Well, that's an interesting angle.
And someone wrote, I believe Airbus aircraft have that design fault as well.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's good of them to cover all the bases,
There was also a piece of footage allegedly shot in the South Indian Ocean. When in the early days of the search, a week or so ago, it was pretty rough.
Yeah.
And the caption was, this is what they're up against in the Southern Ocean or something.
Waves.
Allegedly recorded on March 12th or something in the Southern Ocean. Well, it turned out to be some LPG tanker in the North Atlantic shot over a year before that.
Yeah.
And yet all the news, a lot of the news sites picked it up.
You got to be careful these days, because all that type of information is basically freely available.
It's completely untrue.
Yeah,
You just can't rely on anything.
No, just make it up.
Yeah, and also the Malaysians have had it in the neck for the way they've run this whole thing. But, you don't expect this to happen. They're inexperienced. The pressure's on.
First time it's happened, yeah. I mean, they haven't handled it well, but that's a societal thing on their part, and you kind of feel sorry for them, because they're getting hammered. I mean, the Chinese government's given them a good hiding, and
well, they've been looking for an opportunity, have they?
Yeah, well, they seem to have.
Yeah.
They're sort of asserting their power over the region. And I mean, what can Malaysia Airlines do? They don't know where the plane is.
No.
Nobody knows where the plane is.
I'm sure they'd love to know where it is.
So having the Chinese government support the victims in demanding answers, it's posturing, isn't it?
I wonder if it's possible, depending on how you land in the sea, for the thing to completely disappear. Everything under the waves. Not even one or two things,
We might be looking at that, because given the length of time it's taken to find the wreckage field, even if stuff floated around for 2 weeks, it might have sunk by now.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's ages ago now. So you're really looking at for artifacts almost.
Yeah.
All right, so not much more to say about that, except it looks like the spotlight's come back off the crew. There was a few days there where everyone was on the captain,
Yeah.
His wife left him, and some mystery phone
His
call.
wife left him because he spent too much time on the flight sim.
Yeah,
probably.
he was too passionate about his job.
It seems to be.
But that's nothing new.
No.
Would a woman understand about that, Martin?
Oh, jeez.
We're not here to discuss that. The other interesting aspect of this whole search is the forces involved, the aircraft involved. I love those Chinese IL-76s.
Yeah.
Our new Orion.
Yeah.
That's Flash with all the glass cockpit.
Flash as.
It looks so new. We know it's so old, but
Yeah,
it looks so
yeah,
new.
yeah.
The P-8 Poseidon,
I don't even know if you're actually allowed to mention its name, because it's all classified.
even its existence
Yeah.
is classified. You notice they blur it on the screen.
Yeah.
They do with their faces.
Yeah.
But they've been enjoying getting that one out, haven't they?
They have.
There's been a great
Apparently,
opportunity.
I don't know. I'm not actually going to commit to ever having heard that it's there.
Practice in the real world.
Yeah.
Nothing like it.
Yeah.
And now Sir Peter Jackson's Gulfstream 650.
Yeah.
Well, that's a bit of class out
There's a
there.
bit of Flash. They'll be the guys that draw that roster will be pretty happy.
The point is, though, it has huge range. You can stay out there for a long time.
We'll stay out there for a long time.
What was it being used as? A communications relay?
Is
It's
that
like,
what they? Is that
can
what
you
they're
hear
doing
me,
with it?
Bob?
They'll be lolling around in this lap of luxury.
In the back cabin.
Yeah.
Do you think they'd have service?
I think it's automatic with the plane. I think it's part of the plane.
Part of the package?
Yeah, it's just
Well, it comes with a hostess and things.
or a host, or
Or a host.
or a host. Yeah,
Yeah, well, more than one, depending on how many searches there are.
Yeah.
They've got those nice big windows too.
they do have nice big
So
windows.
good
yeah.
for observation.
Wow. Yeah.
As they continue the rubbish count in the southern Indian
It's a
Ocean,
shocker that is.
we should be trying to find out actually who's dumping this stuff, by the way.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd be happy to commit a frigate to the exercise of making sure no one litters there.
What, and shoot them?
Threaten to.
Seems to be a bit of a common thread, this program.
Just make them clean it up.
Yeah. Well, they could probably use those satellites not just for fighting real bad evildoers, but for litter evildoers.
It's all evil doing in the end.
It is all degrees of evil doing.
Exactly.
And they could trace them and present them with a nice juicy fine at the next port they run to. Oh, we saw you through all your bait tubs and a couple of tarpaulins overboard. That'll be 35k. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
They'd soon start getting the attention of these rapacious, uncaring fishing companies.
Yes. Well, maybe that's what Sea Shepherd's new thing could
New
be.
role.
New role.
I'd endorse that. I see
Yeah.
they're in our port at the moment.
They
the
are.
Bob Barker is here.
Yeah, probably looking for something else to do. And litter on the Southern Ocean would be actually, I would give them a few dollars
Would
for
you?
that. I would, because that's a matter which is
So they
very
need
close
to,
my
to,
heart.
to repurpose.
The repurpose for litter patrol.
Yeah.
And I'm serious. I'm shocked about
No,
how much
I am
rubbish
too. I
is
think
in
a
the
lot of
sea.
people are. I've heard people debating this. It hasn't gone unnoticed.
Yeah, we should get the Sea Shepherd out there.
We'll keep an eye on that one, but I'm not going to make any calls on whether, if next time we're here, we'll be saying it's been found. It probably wouldn't have been.
No, I don't think they will.
We have been watching our statistics on iTunes. They're going up. We're getting about, 250, 280 a day?
Yeah, we are.
So thank you for listening.
Yes.
And we see many listen in the United States.
Yeah.
If we're to believe the data,
If it believes the statistics, indeed.
Yeah,
So we're up
but-
to sort of coming up 20,000 listens now.
not bad.
And I'd say about 60-70% are coming from servers based in the States.
So we'll try and include a bit more news from overseas, as we say here,
Yes.
to satisfy the demand. But anyway, first up, local. This is an interesting one. We give aid to countries and places that we want to support, like Rarotonga, the Cook Islands. But I don't think anyone thinks it's corporate welfare.
Well, it turns out we're not actually giving aid to Rarotonga. We're giving aid to Air New Zealand to fly to Rarotonga.
Yeah, now
using
how does
aid
that-
for
what-
Rarotonga.
We give about, 29 million a year in aid to the Cook Islands, according to the Finance Ministry.
Yeah.
I believe about 13 million a year of that.
Gets given to Air New Zealand
Yeah.
to support the flight connections between New Zealand, Rarotonga, and I believe Los Angeles.
When you think of aid, you see schools, you see medical centres,
Yeah.
and, things to help the government work. And,
Well, now you see airlines.
yeah, none of us knew that was going on.
No, and that's quite a lot of money. It'd be interesting to know the level of subsidy they need, but also you might ask the question, couldn't they put it out to tender? Because I'm pretty sure Air Fiji would give that a crack
Yeah.
for 12 million or slightly less.
The government probably wouldn't be so keen about giving money to a foreign airline. The Foreign Affairs Minister, Murray McCully, according to the Stuff story here, said no New Zealand aid money would go to Air New Zealand, but did not say how the aid money would be separated from the Cook Islands government budget. He said the Cook Islands Finance Ministry took expert advice on the costs and benefits of the arrangement.
Expert advice probably from New Zealand Airlines and the New Zealand government.
Yeah, someone in Air New Zealand, perhaps.
Yeah.
They say air links between Rarotonga and Sydney and LA are vital to the economic well-being of the people of the Cook Islands. Well, that's true.
Couldn't they be via Auckland using the regular Air New Zealand flights? If they're that underserved that they need $12 million a year to keep them running, how vital are they? Because obviously no one's doing it.
Air New Zealand said it carried about 200,000 people to Rarotonga from Auckland, Sydney and LA in 2013. Well, that's a lot of people, isn't it?
Yeah, but those Sydney flights will be via Auckland, wouldn't they? Because I don't think Air New Zealand does a direct flight from Sydney to Rarotonga.
Their long-term goal was to make the routes commercially sustainable. Well, 200,000.
It's not bad.
They did do the bikini safety thing in the Cook Islands,
Oh, well,
giving them a boost.
that's aid.
Like, thank you for the 13 million.
Yeah.
We're going to do this, and that'll make you famous.
Yeah.
So don't complain. Don't say anything.
Yeah, just give us the money and we'll give you a few flights.
So the question is that corporate welfare, or is that, fair enough? You need to underpin the economy of this place. Otherwise, it'll cost us more because we'll have to support people who are doing nothing if the tourists aren't coming through.
They should have been more transparent about this in the beginning and maybe we would know more about it.
No one asked, though. No one asked the hard questions anymore, Martin.
No, that's it.
Big announcement from Auckland Airport Company in the past week. They're getting ready for 44 million passengers in 2044 or something, growing out from the 14 million so far. Obviously, big plans for New Zealand Inc. It's a huge increase in traffic.
Big plans to up the airport charges relatively quickly, I could imagine. I don't know where they think they're going to get 40 million people from.
44 million
44 million.
in the next 30 years.
Yeah.
That's sort of the point I was trying to illustrate.
So you'd think if current New Zealand population just over 4 million is supporting airport that runs 14 million people, you'd have to almost quadruple the New Zealand population if the population base is going to support that, or, as obviously is the case, they have huge plans to use Auckland as a sort of hub between Australasia and South America and places like that, because we know they do have those plans to, with the new Singapore tie-up to link Singapore to South America and all these places. But gee, over 40 million people, that's a huge, huge capacity jump.
The way it's been talked about is that will come from tourism growth.
And unless people are planning to build 10 times more hotel rooms, it could be a small problem.
Is it wise to commit such a huge expenditure? And I see they're going to fund it from debt.
Yes.
So that's more debt.
It's a very optimistic figure, and the only way they can pay off their debt is to increase charges.
Well, that's exactly right.
So unless they can start attracting passengers pretty quickly, we're all going to pay for the airport expansion. I hope they don't do what happened in Berlin, where they spent $8 billion on an airport, which is now, I think it's 6 years overdue for opening, and now they're thinking of tearing it down and starting again, because they've lost track of the whole project.
Well, that's one way to keep economic growth going. Just build something, don't use it, tear it down and do it again.
It's deeply shaming for Germany, who've always prided themselves on their ability to get stuff done. It's a brand new airport, they're going to tear it down.
Sounds like Japan.
Yeah.
If in doubt, build another airport.
Yeah.
They were talking about an extra runway, a combined terminal. Well, that sort of makes sense.
It does? No, absolutely.
Yeah,
a combined terminal will be really good. So you've got...
And obviously transport between the city and the airport.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the major priority, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's say they get that. What is that going to be on the back of? Standard wide bodies, or you'd have to have a significant number of A380 size aircraft to be able to bring that sort of traffic, wouldn't you?
I think by 2040 there'll be plenty of A380s trolling around. I don't think that'll be a problem. But they will. They'll have to have lots of A380 gates. Emirates will probably be doing 6 flights a day to here.
Or China.
China.
They must be thinking China here too.
Yeah, of course. China, Japan, all these guys. There'll be lots of very big planes there.
There's no reason why this country couldn't actually be one of the preeminent destinations for the Chinese middle class, numbering hundreds and hundreds of millions and growing all the time.
Absolutely, but something has to be done to make the value better. I was recently speaking to some overseas visitors, and they were just gobsmacked at how expensive tourist activities were, like a guided hike through the bush. They just could not believe how expensive it was. Like unaffordably expensive. They weren't doing these things because they said it's just too much.
Well, put it in the suggestion box on the way out, that's all I can say.
Yeah.
Do people read those?
I don't think so.
No. And they say it could bring up to 27,000 full-time jobs. That's a lot of jobs.
That is an awful lot of jobs. I mean, maybe that's why they need a bigger airport, for the 27,000 people who will be working there.
Yeah, build it and they will come.
Yeah.
But this is the thing, I mention these things because you just get the feeling that they're just slightly over
Cooking things.
cooking it,
Yeah. Well, you got shareholders to sell it to.
You've got to be conservative in these matters, don't you?
Well, I mean, there is a certain element of build it and they will come, because you don't want to build an airport that's too small, because then you won't be making your returns.
No.
So,
or build it in a way that it's easy to add to.
well, that would be the holy grail, wouldn't it? Yeah, a modular
Kit set.
Yeah.
A kit set terminal made out of old containers.
Yeah.
Well, Wellington was an old factory
Yeah.
turned into a terminal, and it was like being in an old factory, actually.
Yeah. Not much of a terminal.
No. Had very little to suggest it was a terminal, except counters where you weighed things.
Some planes outside
The Dart turbo prop spinning in the
lining
background.
up.
All right, well, that remains to be seen, but at least points for being bold and visionary.
Bold and visionary, 100%. I remember the Asiana accident in July last year.
The one in San Francisco.
The one where it flew into the end of the runway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Seems to be a bit of a mix-up there between the 777 autopilot systems and the Asiana crew. From the outside looking in, it looks like a classic case of the crew not actually being fully aware of what was going on. Now, there is some suggestion that there was an autopilot mode changed,
Right.
an uncalled for mode change at 1,600 feet,
Yeah.
but that is disputed. First officer, or the captain, turned off the autopilot and didn't seem to be aware the effect that would have on the way the auto throttles work. So basically, the plane flew too low and too slow, and the crew didn't catch it,
Right.
believing that the auto throttles were taking care of the speed. And they weren't, because the plane was in descent mode, and the auto throttles are basically not going to do anything.
There were 3 of them in the cockpit, I believe, and 2 were highly experienced because one was being sort of like cleared to
Yeah.
fly there.
Yeah.
And none of them picked up any discrepancy.
No.
None of them at all.
I guess it can happen to all of us. We just end up relying too much on automation. But it's interesting. Some of this is the fact that people's expectations of automation is far higher than the certification authorities are allowing on planes.
So it's like a psychological
Yeah, people are
issue.
saying, well, it's simple. My iPad can do this.
Yeah.
My car can do this. My fridge can do this. surely it's doing this.
You assign a level of intuitive thinking to a machine that is incapable of that.
Not allowed to be capable of it because it was all designed and certified in the 80s and they just didn't put that capability in there.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of changes coming up. You know, you've got the Malaysian Airlines disappearance, you've got stuff like this that are all actually quite avoidable.
Well, this is how...
with the application of more technology, not less.
This is how things advance, though. You know,
yes,
things like this happen. Unfortunately, always been the way.
Well, as somebody once said, didn't they say, science advances one funeral at a time?
Yeah, well, that'd be right. Do you think there's any cultural aspect to this?
I don't think they fell into a trap that other people wouldn't fall into. I mean, it does happen.
40 knots lower than they should have been.
That is quite a lot slower.
119, but it's slow, isn't it?
It's slow.
The airline said test pilots had trouble landing under the same conditions in simulators.
No, they did the same auto throttle mode and everything.
Right.
Yeah, I think what they mean is they had difficulty recovering.
Right.
Because they were low and real slow.
Really slow. There's been another report come out in the last few weeks. You may remember this one. It was a 737-200 in Canada, First Air. Just seemed to fly into a hill in broad daylight. It's interesting looking at the report from the Canadian authorities and looking at the pilot discussion of the aircraft navigation as they approached the airport.
Basically, the first officer was completely onto it and kept reminding the captain that we're not doing what you think we're doing, and he basically disagreed.
Yeah, and then he realizes right at the last moment that things aren't very good.
Still, the first officer had to say, he said a few seconds before, I don't like this. The plane starts saying sink rate, sink rate. The first officer says go round. The ground proximity warning system says minimums.
Yeah.
The captain calls for go round thrust and bang, that was it.
4 crew, 8 passengers killed. 3 passengers survived. It was a combi aircraft, I think.
Yeah.
Just goes to show you, though, that if you've got someone who is wrong and you know you're right, at what point do you give up the subtle suggestions and actually say, listen here, I'm taking control.
Take out the taser.
Yeah.
Taser the captain or the first officer, whoever's in control. I mean, that's all about cockpit resource planning, isn't it? And it just seems to be, from the very beginning, the captain just wasn't onto it at all.
You keep thinking that they were on the localizer.
Yeah.
The first officer keeps disagreeing.
But he doesn't seem that he
even reminded him of the hill at the right of the runway, which they hit.
Wow. You just hope you never find yourself in a situation like that.
The first officer...
I'd shoot you, Paul, if you were...
Well, I mean, in the end, what do? First officer questions captain as to whether they did something wrong. Obviously, he's worried about the position. First officer states opinion that they should abandon the approach and then solve the navigational problem. Captain indicates that he plans to continue the approach. And then the first officer acknowledges plan to continue.
The first officer should have said, I am not continuing the approach, we're going around.
Yeah, I insist.
I insist.
And try and grab control.
Yeah.
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 The captain had 5,200 hours on the type.
Yeah.
First officer only 103.
The captain had 13,000 hours total. That's a lot of flying.
How could you explain that sort of behaviour?
Bad day?
Okay.
Really?
Bad day at the office.
Yeah, unfortunately, and that's probably what it comes from.
Yeah. All right.
Unfortunately, there was a hill in the way. If the hill hadn't been there, that'd have been fine. Good thing we're not flying anywhere in or out of Germany today, isn't it?
Lufthansa pilots are going to strike.
Yeah.
Aren't they paid enough, Martin? If anywhere in the world, this is where you'd be on top dollar.
I guess they don't think they are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It might be for conditions or something, but that's a lot of flights. 3,800 flights cancelled over 2 days.
The airline's planning to scrap the early retirement deal.
Yeah, there you go.
And they're not happy about that.
Yeah.
Between the 2nd and 4th of April, you might have something to say about that. You lived in Germany. You're familiar with Lufthansa.
Never flew Lufthansa, though. Well, very rarely flew Lufthansa. I live very close to Switzerland, and so I used to fly everywhere with Swissair, which is now actually part of Lufthansa. But I do know people who work at Lufthansa, and their pilots do have a pretty good deal. But you've got to be aware that, or due to my experience in Germany, people are particularly aware of how contracts work. So if the company strikes a contract with you, it works both ways. And so this will largely be about them trying to change a contract without due process or consideration, and so they've gone out on strike. they will reach a compromise and everyone will back down in the end.
Oh,
But
I see.
It's more a point of
A
order
procedural
type.
thing.
I'm pretty sure it's going to turn out to be more a procedural thing than anything else.
And threatening a strike is sort of like just a procedural answer to the procedural breach.
Pull your head back in, guys. You can't make these changes without consulting us. Let's do the consultation, blah, blah, blah.
They say that over the 3 days, if they strike, the airline could lose 30 to 50 million euros in profit.
Because Lufthansa will be having to put them on all other airlines.
Yeah, well, that's what they're saying. And also cargo, huge cargo operation. If it weren't for the workers, things would run a lot easier, you know. That's what I always think. Not hearing much about 787s at the moment. Things have settled down, wouldn't you say?
You'd hope so. About time.
Yeah.
I was reading on the Motley Fool, though. They reckon it's still going to be a long time before the program actually makes huge amounts of money because they sold the first couple of hundred real cheap.
Yeah.
And the options are real cheap.
So there's no getting out of those deals, I suppose.
No getting out of it, no.
Right.
And we're not hearing much about the wing repair, but I'm sure something will pop up soon.
Or the other plant in Charlotte, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's happening with that?
Don't know.
Because there was trouble at Mill.
There was trouble, yeah.
Yeah.
But haven't heard much more. But no, it's been pretty quiet on the 787 front. I'm pretty sure Boeing's very happy about that as well.
Qatar flying around their A380, obviously coming up for delivery soon. Looks very smart, I got to say.
Their A350 will be coming in soon. Air New Zealand will be getting the 787-900s. I told you, I was in Melbourne the other day, as you know, and there was a Jetstar 787-800 trolling around the airport. It's a big plane, much bigger than you think. When you're up close to it, it's a big, very, very impressive looking aircraft, actually.
Right.
So the 900 is going to be even more impressive.
Yeah, I think it's deceiving. I haven't seen one in person yet, but it looks like it's about the size of a 7.6.
Yeah, it's
but
big.
But it's not,
it's
right?
A beefy plane, and those scalloped engine cowls, that looks real cool.
Oh, okay. That's just for looks, isn't it?
Noise abatement.
No, I know. But, you could say that there's always a case for making something look better.
I'd do it anyway.
Even if it doesn't achieve any efficiency. Or even if it slightly impacts on.
I'd do it.
If it looks good.
Because it does look very cool.
Remember, if it looks good, it flies good.
Yeah.
And I see Asiana, we mentioned them before, their first A380s painted as well.
Oh.
It looks pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's...
acres of white.
Yes, well, that's the modern look, isn't it? I think the BA A380 is fantastic looking because by painting the whole bottom blue, they've kind of broken it up.
I agree.
That's a great looking livery.
It looks sharp.
It's very sharp. Air France just looks like they haven't painted and stuck a sticker on the side. Air France.
They always look like they haven't cleaned it anyway.
Yeah.
I see BA have got the to fly to serve crest back on.
Yes.
I used to like that.
Yeah.
Because that's so British.
Yes.
To fly, to serve.
You can imagine all Winston sitting up front.
Yeah, it's like, we believe it.
Yeah. It's not true, but we believe it.
Yeah, because it looks like it should.
Yeah.
I think it should go back on the tail.
Yeah.
I got to say, that slightly off-white that BA used to paint their planes back in the Landor scheme days, I always thought that was a great effect.
Yeah.
There was something about it. It caught your eye.
It gives it a bit of body with it's still white.
I wonder what it would look like if they sort of kept that.
Did that now?
That white, yeah.
Put a bit of cream in.
It had a hint of sort of grey, didn't it?
Yeah.
Or bluey grey in it. But I just thought it was good. It had a sort of cloud-like. In fact, for those who are watching the YouTube version of this, just as we're talking, I'm just putting a shot of a BA 747-400 at Perth right there in that livery. On a beautiful day there. It's always a beautiful day in Perth.
It's when BA still used to fly to Australia.
Yeah, that's right. They came in daily with this thing.
To Perth.
Yeah, to Perth. I think it went on to go on to Sydney or Melbourne.
Well, in those days, they had funny flights, didn't they? They'd be like Perth, Colombo, Alexandria, Morocco, Birmingham. Yeah.
No, Bombay always used to be in there. And of course, it was Kuwait. And remember when Saddam Hussein invaded? One of their 747-100s, I think, was at the gate there. And they ended up, burning it down at the ramp. Poor thing. What did it ever do?
No, shame.
And there were a couple of Kiwis on that. And, of course, he used them all for human shields.
Yeah.
Of course, we wander off on tangents on this.
You do.
Here's one that caught my eye. Aeroflot planning final scheduled IL-96 service. In fact, it's happened.
That's a shame, isn't it? That was a great-looking plane.
In fact, let's call the IL-96 our aircraft of the day.
Yeah.
worthy of mention.
The main overseas buyer was Cubana. The rest of them were all Russian-based. Never had an accident.
No. 29 built, by the way.
Basically competed with the A340-300. Didn't have a huge range, under 6,500 miles. But there was enough to get most places from Russia. I think they tried to sell the 400 version, which had Pratt & Whitney engines. And there's always talk going around that they might build a few freighters with these Pratt & Whitney engines and try and sell them to Westerners. But given the current freight market, that's unusual that they're going to do that. Carried up to 400 people.
That's not bad.
But that was single class. You had to cram them in.
Yeah.
But 250, 320 people was its capacity as used. Interesting, the Russian planes, if you look at photos of the interior, it doesn't have central overhead bins.
Oh, that's right.
So it's got a really high ceiling.
Yeah.
To get air to the passengers, the air nozzle was in the seat in front of you. Yeah, they piped air into the seats. And so you read on airliners.net or something, you read flight reports where the people say it's really comfortable, it's really quiet, actually.
Early glass cockpit, fly-by-wire, I didn't realise that.
Yeah, yeah.
And supercritical wings is the mention here. So Aeroflot, they had the most. Krasair,
yeah.
Domodedovo Airlines,
Yeah.
Soyuz Airlines, and of course Cubana and Rossiya. Some of those are cargo versions, but they don't make them to be commercially successful. You can't make 29 of these things and be in the money.
No, well, they don't make them to be commercially successful, which is why they've stopped making them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and obviously the airlines there aren't supporting the product.
No.
Yeah.
But good luck to Sukhoi, because they've just sold a whole bunch of superjets, haven't they?
Yeah, to China.
100 or so.
Yeah.
And I hear they're talking of a stretch as well.
Yeah, that seems to have gone very well.
Yeah.
Despite there being a crash. And ANA buying 70 new aircraft.
Yes, the second major Japanese airline. Split this time between Boeing for all the wide bodies, 777-9Xs and whatnot, and Airbus for all the narrow bodies.
Would Airbus be disappointed, do you think?
I think Airbus will be a little bit disappointed, but they can't be that disappointed, but they've got JAL, which
Yeah.
is huge.
So that's about a wrap for this fortnight. MH370, 2 weeks from now.
I wonder where we'll be.
You know, I think we'll know that there is even more rubbish in the southern Indian Ocean
that's a
this
given.
time in the next fortnight than we do now.
Yeah.
All right, so in Wellington, from me, Paul Brennan, it's goodbye.
And in Wellington, me, Martin Noakes, it's goodbye.